Welcome back, gamers, to another fluffy video, and today we're gonna be talking about that new Soma augment with some numbers like the nerd I am, and also Honeytraps. Define Honeytraps, Marshmallow. Well, it's definitely not what you think, and I know how y'all think now. The Discord server is proof. You see, honey is sometimes really nice and sweet. I'm sorry guys, I can't help it. Other times, honey is used to signify deception, lies, traps, and even sin. And a lot of things in Warframe are kinda like that. Rivens especially, those are potentially one of the biggest plat traps. That is not to say that there aren't mods and weapons in Warframe that are actually decent and fun to use. Is the new Soma augment one of them though? Well, the short answer is not really. There are other things you could do to the Soma Prime which are arguably better for the purposes of increasing DPS. We'll take a look at the performance numbers in a bit and see whether or not a Riven would be a better bet instead for you Soma mains out there. And before I forget, timestamps are in the video description as always. Okay, can we get the name out of the way real quick? I think the emphasis is on the T, so Hata-Satya? I'd like to meet the person over at DE who gets to name these things. Would definitely ask for a new Mock Rush augment for Gauss and name it Adios. What this mod does is pretty simple. Increases critical chance with each hit until you either reload or holster your weapon. Quick melee resets the bonus as well, unfortunately. Now on the wiki site it does say that additional hits from multi-shot and punch through do count towards the CC bonus. And for some reason Mesa's Shatter Shield, which reflects incoming enemy fire, actually triggers this mod. I think it shouldn't, but hey, that's just classic Warframe inconsistency at work, I suppose. Now, ignoring all that and just focusing on the mod by itself, no external buffs or anything, is it worth a slot? I'm inclined to say no, especially if you have a Riven, but if you really like the Soma Prime and you got nothing else to put on, it could be worth it. And before we get into the nerd stuff, I just want to say that these tests are meant to help you decide on what stats to roll for on your Riven, if you even have one, or would like to get one, that is, and to see if getting either the Riven or Augment mod is even worth it compared to just a quote-unquote standard build. I did 3 separate test runs against a level 100 Exo officer, each with a different setup. The first setup is a Corrosive build with the new Augment mod, of course. The second one's pretty similar to the first one, but with the Augment switched out for infected clips. And finally, the third one was just 7 mods plus 192% fury buff from Chroma. I had to actually go negative power strength for that. And the reason why is because I wanted to see if a raw increase in base damage would be more effective than just the crits you'd get with Hata-Satya. I thought about buying a Riven, but just decided to simulate the base damage buff with a Chroma, and save some plats, of course. The Soma Prime does have a disposition of 1 anyways, so 150 to 160% base damage is I think the most you're gonna get realistically out of a Riven, making this test sort of a best case scenario. The regular Soma does have slightly higher disposition, but it's kinda relevant in this discussion. Anyways, here are the numbers. The Soma Prime augment does actually boost your DPS significantly compared to the build with infected clips, at least against a level 100 Exo officer, which is probably one of the more chunk of enemies in Warframe. The third test with 192% fury and just 7 mods is pretty close though. But it should be said that taking longer than 10 seconds to kill a level 100 Exo officer is nothing impressive. In fact, it looks pretty weak sauce next to even the numbers a Piranha Prime can achieve. I stared at these results and halfway through the script I wondered, maybe the DPS gain you receive from the Augment mod sorta scales exponentially. Maybe it's better to go with just a base damage buff for weaker enemies. And so I did more testing with an Elite Lancer this time. And while they are pretty close, the 7 mod setup with Chroma's Vex armor buff outdid the Augment build, but only just. In fact, the Augment build was the slowest, so I guess for some players out there who argued that the Soma is more than decent for quote-unquote regular mobs, perhaps it's better to just skip the Hata-Satya and its inconsistent nature and go with something reliable like a plus 90 element mod. On a side note, I guess it's also safe to say then that the Hata-Satya mod gives your Soma Prime a DPS boost roughly equivalent to about 200% base damage buff. Now before you go, who even uses the Soma Prime in Warframe these days? Fullman for the win. I know, using the Soma Prime these days is kinda like trying to farm karma with a dead meme template. I mean, it'll work and sometimes it'll be great, like against Star Chart or Swordy level content, though I'd imagine the Soma Prime would struggle against level 80 enemies with augmented armor. I think this is still one of the better rifles in Warframe though, if not in terms of pure DPS, maybe in other ways, like the large ammo clip does make it easy to deal with waves of enemies, but let's face it, there really isn't a rifle in Warframe right now that would warrant to use over a large number of melee weapons in high-level missions like Steel Path. I had absolutely no interest in primary kit guns once I realized that it's just kit guns all over again, but without primed target cracker or primed pistol gambit. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I hope this video was somewhat helpful, and hey, if you've made it all the way here, then might as well hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys real soon in the next video.